Before I share some words with you, you know we love welcoming new friends and old friends. And I got a call a little bit earlier today that a beloved colleague and a beloved rabbi of our congregation for many years, Rabbi Spike Anderson and his wife Marita were in town and might be attending services. And sure enough, Rabbi Anderson and Marita, why don't you stand here? Stand up and let everybody greet you. And now, what I want you to know is when I spoke to Rabbi Anderson, he didn't tell me what he was doing in town. And I found out that you two are being honored among a number of other people for your work. Is it A Child's Heart? What's the name of the organization? Save a Child's Heart, which you worked with on our Y School kids last few years. So they're here to be honored, which is just beautiful. They didn't even tell me that that's why they were here, and it's a tribute to both of you and indeed to our school as well. And so it's always wonderful to see you here. Always, always wonderful. How many of you remember the name Howard Wasden? Boy, I'll tell you, fame is so fleeting. It was only a few years ago he became an instant celebrity. In fact, I typed the name Howard, just the word Howard, in my Google search bar, and his name was the first thing that came up. But in case you don't recall, and I confess, I didn't remember either. A few years ago, Wasden published a book. It was a memoir of the Navy SEAL Team, SEAL Team 6, and it coincided with the news that Osama bin Laden had been killed by that very same group. And soon Wasden was interviewed by Time magazine, and in that interview, he revealed 4 fascinating thoughts, indeed, I dare say insights, into SEAL Team 6. I read a piece by Rabbi Wayne Allen, and he suggests that if we examine these insights carefully, we can apply them to our lives as well. So I want to acknowledge and thank him for sharing the insights and the ideas of which I'm going to elaborate on. So here are 4 things we can learn about life, especially as Jews, from SEAL Team 6. The first has to do with repetition. SEAL Team 6 is, of course, legendary, so you wonder, of all of the elite teams in the military, what qualities make them so good? Well, in the article, Wasden describes the following. He says each team member is layered down with something like 50 pounds of equipment. They're given a sidearm, 2 weapons also. They run up and down stairs all day long, clearing rooms of potential threats. And they do it day after day, every day, until they're called for a mission. Really? I have to confess, I expected to hear something a little more compelling. For example, that these men are selected because they have certain abilities, great strength or extraordinary eyesight or powerful reflexes, you know, the kinds of things your clergy at Stephen Wise all possess collectively. Apparently, those are not the secrets of success for SEAL Team 6. In fact, one of the team's former members says what distinguishes this elite unit from every other is its dedication to training. Day after day, same activity, day after day. Sounds kind of monotonous, boring, irrelevant, maybe even useless, but the members of the team, they don't see it that way. They see repetitive training as a way to sharpen their skills and better equip them to face any challenge. And that gives them confidence. And that confidence is liberating for them, and it brings them closer to their goal of being ready for combat. So here's what it reminds us of. Prayer. It reminds us of prayer in Judaism. There is something in Judaism called Madea Shel Tfilah, fixed prayer. Certain parts of the service are set. We recite the same words every day with very little variation. There's, of course, places for personal prayer, but much of the service is the same, daily and also on Shabbat. But regular prayer, done with practice and intention, it doesn't stifle. It can liberate. Just as people who you may know who go to a daily minyan every morning, or people who come here on Thursday morning at 8 o'clock in the morning, you're all invited. Cantor Lamb leads a beautiful, more traditional minyan. Ask the men and women, mostly men, but ask them who come to that minyan if they find it stifling or liberating. And those who come to the Shabbat morning minyan, or you who are here this evening, it can be the same fixed prayer, but the repetition can make us better. Indeed, it can help us to come closer to our goal as Jews of becoming better people and bringing us closer to God. Which leads me to the second lesson I think we can learn from SEAL Team 6. It's called muscle memory. Wasden was asked if the skills he learned were still with them. And he gave the following example. He went to the shooting range for the first time in a decade, and all of his shots were within a quarter's diameter of the bullseye. And his comment to the person who was with him, talk about muscle memory. What exactly is muscle memory? Once our bodies are accustomed to doing something regularly, this pattern of activity is not easily forgotten. Think about riding a bike. Even though you may not have ridden a bike for decades, chances are you'll be able to get back on that bike and very quickly feel comfortable. Athletes know about muscle memory, right? Pitchers constantly practice their pitching. Golfers constantly practice their golf swing, all for the same reason, because it creates muscle memory. Well, I want to suggest as Jews that our tradition strives to develop a parallel. It's called goodness memory. As Jews, we can incorporate goodness memory in our lives. If we repeat acts of goodness, of kindness, of compassion, if we give tzedakah regularly, or we avoid lashon hara, if we avoid gossip, this can become second nature both to us and to our children. You know, in New York City, everyone takes public transportation. And I began to realize when I was living there that the bus is in some ways a microcosm of life. There were those who instinctively said thank you to the driver when they walked off the bus. And there were those who went out of their way to give up their seat for an elderly man or an elderly woman or a pregnant woman. Even more powerful were those who would confront those still sitting in those seats, in designated seats for an elderly person, and the elderly person would walk in, and the folks, these kids usually would not get up. I know it's hard to believe that any New Yorker would do that, but nevertheless, occasionally it happens. There were those who would regularly confront those people and look at them and say, you need to stand up for an elderly person. And he did it without thinking about it. It was, in a sense, goodness memory. And that's what Judaism can do. It can create goodness muscle memory, repeating patterns of goodness and courage that can help us to act in ways that elevate our world. The third lesson we can learn from SEAL Team 6 is about the importance of teamwork. Without the members all working together, this most elite fighting unit in the United States military, it simply doesn't function. No mission can be completed alone, no matter how strong or effective a member is. In the Torah, the Kohanim are empowered to perform certain rituals, yet they cannot do it without the support of the Levites. Judaism is a group endeavor. Teamwork is a way of coming together and caring for one another. And here I want to suggest honestly that as Jews, while we can always be better, the teamwork that we have as a people, I know from speaking to people who are in other religions, is something that they deeply look up to. You know, you remember in the 70s, the Soviet Jewry movement, right? Soviet Jews would be behind bars in the Soviet Union. Well, when one of them would get arrested, there would be street demonstrations in the streets of Paris, in New York, in Los Angeles, all over the world. The rest of the world knew about how Jews were being treated in the former Soviet Union because Jews told them about their fellow Jew. You know that wasn't true for any other group? Lots of Baptists were behind bars in the Soviet Union, but we didn't hear about them. In fact, the President of the United States, President Carter, a Baptist himself, a committed church-going Baptist, would often speak about Soviet Jewry. He never mentioned Soviet Baptists. That was a reflection, if you will, of working together. Our sense of teamwork, our sense of caring for one another for a common goal. And the fourth thing we can learn from SEAL Team 6 is the importance of anticipating and planning. Do you remember what happened in Pakistan when they landed and tried to capture bin Laden initially? The team took 2 helicopters in anticipation that something could go wrong. You remember what happened? One of them crashed. And if they hadn't anticipated that, it could have been a disaster. One element of wisdom is the ability to anticipate the futures. So often we are reactive in life. We wait for something to happen and then we consider what to do. But waiting for a crisis is not a good way to live, by the way, either for an individual or collectively as a people. When you think about the future, when you anticipate, when you plan, it causes us to reflect in advance the consequences of our actions, the consequences of our good actions and the ones that aren't so good. What will be the impact of our children seeing us regularly volunteer, spending time with the needy or the elderly, showing respect to our aging parents, or simply reading Jewish books? What impact will that memory have on them if you think about the future? And similarly, what will be the impact if they don't see us doing these things, acting in ways that aren't so good, or if our children simply remember us watching too much television? What's the impact? We need to anticipate it. That's what planning does. It forces us to think about the future that are the result of our actions. So I'll leave you with the following thoughts. You know, the more I learn, the greater my appreciation for our tradition and for its insights into the human condition. I know I'm not alone because tonight, a very special welcome. We have about 120 students who are in our Melton adult education program. We have current students, we have some who have just begun their 2-year course of study, and some who continued after that course of study in the graduate program. We offer 4 graduate classes this year, and they've been studying with us for 5 years. This is their 6th year. And I know from conversations with so many of you how much greater your appreciation is for Judaism and how much you've learned about its unparalleled insights into life. It's a credit to your teachers, and we'll be talking about that a little later on at dinner. But I know as we get older and study more, we begin to have an even greater and greater appreciation for what our tradition teaches us about how to navigate this complicated world. So think about those 4 lessons. The first one, SEAL Team 6 appreciated repetition so they'd be prepared to engage in their work, which is battle. Judaism gives us reputation in prayer, in ritual, in our actions with our family and our world, so that we're prepared to engage in our work, our life. And by the way, repetition is often very beautiful. Lighting candles on Shabbat may be repetitive every week, but doing it regularly in some ways makes it all the more meaningful. SEAL Team 6 created muscle memory so that the skills that they learned would stay with them for decades and would become second nature. Well, we as Jews can develop goodness memory so that goodness can become second nature and the fabric of our lives. SEAL Team 6 understood the importance of teamwork. That didn't mean they always agreed, but they worked together for a greater good, and they forgot their differences when they were threatened. We Jews, as are a people, whether in diaspora or in Israel, when we're under fire, when we're threatened, we too always come together as a team. And finally, SEAL Team 6, who planned and anticipated what might occur, well, let's do the same. Let's reflect in advance on what we can do to help ensure a vibrant Jewish future with the faith that God will be alongside us on the journey. In Pirkei Avot, a tractate of the Mishnah, the following question is raised. Ezehu Chacham, who is wise? The response, he who learns from everyone. This evening, we've learned lessons from what we might have thought was an unlikely source, SEAL Team 6. But in doing so, we are so much the wiser. Shabbat Shalom.